Howdy folks, Dart here with another ride video. Today I'm riding Loop C at Faulkner Park. While on Loop C, we'll come to a point where you can choose to take either the easy path or the hard path. I'm taking the hard path. You could say that my last video is a preview for this one, as those highlights were taken from this ride. I apologize in advance for the length of this video, as it's going to be fairly long, but a bit over 30 minutes. Please bear with me though. I'm doing this because as a newer rider, I like to watch a video of an entire trail because I want to know what to expect of a trail before I ride it. I want to know what obstacles a trail has in store for me so I know if it's something easy, something challenging, or something that I'm nowhere near ready for. I also want to know if there's a bypass around obstacles that may be too much for me. Knowing what a trail is like before riding it can help a newer rider decide whether or not they want to ride a trail, so they can push their limits without worry of stumbling on something that's too far above their skill level and no way of getting around it. Videos that highlight a trail's features, such as my last video, can do a good job of doing this in a shorter time. However, they do have the downside of leaving the question of what and how much was cut out. Oftentimes, challenging sections such as combinations of steep climbs and switchbacks may be cut out because they aren't very exciting to watch. It can be nice to know that those sections are there though. This can be especially true when a rider is riding in a new climate, rides to and from the trail, has done other activities prior to riding the trail, is limited on time for a particular ride, or combinations of these. Most of the ride at Faulkner Park is what you see here. Smooth to rooty single-track trail that turns back on itself numerous times, with mild climbs and descents, as well as having you frequently ride between narrowly spaced trees. More challenging features are typically spaced a fair distance apart from each other and usually have a bypass route around them. According to trailforks.com, Faulkner Park's Loop C is 2 miles long and is rated as a blue square difficulty. For those new to mountain biking, trails are rated by difficulty and represented as a series of shapes and colors. A green circle is rated as a beginner trail and is typically going to be relatively wide and mostly smooth. A blue square, such as most of the trails here at Faulkner Park, is rated as an intermediate trail and will typically be a single track trail with more challenging features such as switchbacks, dips, rollers, berms, and may have small jumps and drops that will either have a bypass route or can be rolled over instead of getting air. Next are black diamond trails. These trails are rated as advanced and will consist of many of the same features as a blue square, but they will be even more challenging and may not have a bypass route. Double black diamond trails, typically referred to as simply double black trails, are pro-level trails that push the difficulty level above and beyond. Some of the features of double black trails can consist of long gap jumps, such as those that go over roads, tall drops, some of which can exceed 10 feet in height, nearly vertical descents, and step-up jumps where the landing point is higher than the takeoff point. Speaking of features, we're about to come up on the first one on Loop C. The upcoming feature is a pretty good-sized dip, which is common on this trail. To successfully navigate this feature, I put myself in what's called the attack position. All that really means is that I stand up out of the saddle with the pedals level and my knees and elbows are bent to act as a suspension, absorbing any rough patches on the ground. This also allows me to move freely around the bike, so I can shift my weight appropriately. For this feature, I'll shift my weight slightly towards the back, keep from going over the bars on the downslope, then I'll shift back to just over the saddle with my chest leaning more over the bars to keep the bike from doing a backflip on me on the upslope. Here in Northeast Texas, there's a series of cross-country mountain bike races called the E150. The format of the race is basically to do as many laps of the designated route around the trail as you can in 2.5 hours, hence the E150. When riding the local trails, you'll often see signs with the E150 logo and an arrow to designate the race course. Many of these signs seem to be left there year-round. Closer to race day, you'll start to see caution tape at various points on the trail to block certain routes and reduce confusion as to the route the racers are supposed to take. This is usually taken down after the race. They also don't normally prevent non-racers from riding the course, even during the race. This can be both good and bad. It's great that if you show up to a trail unaware that a race is taking place that day, that you can still ride as planned. However, if you're just out for a relaxing ride, it can be a bit nerve-wracking knowing that there are riders on the trail that are riding the trail for the express purpose of going as fast as they can. When this happens, you're constantly looking over your shoulder for the racers, trying to stay out of their way. During this ride, there is a group of about 10 to 15 of these racers, presumably practicing the course for an upcoming event. I first saw them when I rode up to the entrance to Loop C, where they were talking and getting their times from the previous section. I actually thought about waiting at the entrance to Loop C for them to go ahead of me, but it seemed they were still waiting on some of their group to finish, so I went ahead and started the trail. It didn't take them long to catch up, as I started seeing them riding on the portion of the trail that I had just finished within a few minutes of starting my ride. When I got to the point where the trail splits into easy and hard sections, I pulled off and waited a few minutes for them to go by. I kind of needed a break anyway. Normally, I don't take breaks this soon into a ride. Today was a bit different because on top of the E150 riders being on the trail, there were also other groups of riders present, and I'm used to riding the trails when the temperatures are in the mid-50s to mid-60s. During this ride, the temperature was in the mid-70s. In addition to this, I had also just got off work, so I had my backpack full of the stuff I usually carry in my hydration pack, plus a full change of clothes, change of shoes, extra jackets since it was in the high 40s when I left the house that morning, and my bike locks since my bike is also my transportation. I also didn't have my hydration pack, so I was relying on my frame-mounted water bottle for hydration. Speaking of hydration packs, they're almost a must when riding on the trail. For one, it's far easier to use for staying hydrated, as you don't have as far to reach as you do for a water bottle. In addition, they also allow you to carry a few more tools with you than you might normally be able to carry, as well as a safe place to put your cell phone, other valuables, alternate riding gloves and jackets for varying weather conditions, camera mounts and gear if you carry a camera with you, and a place to put whatever else you may need for your ride. I will say though, those tools in the hydration pack are a must, even if you don't put them in a hydration pack. If you're not carrying tools, someone else in your group needs to. Any number of things can go wrong on the trail for any number of reasons. I once had a derailleur hanger snap on me, ending my day. Until I figured out a way of hanging the derailleur and chain over my saddle, I had to pick the bike up and carry it off the trail. Flat tires are probably the most common occurrence, though in my 3 months of riding, I've been fortunate enough that I haven't had one. Even if I do ever have one, I always have patches, tire levers, and 2 tubes on hand to get me rolling again. An example of things going wrong actually happened during this ride. Later in this video, I come up behind a young guy going a bit slower than me. I didn't want to pass right away because there were times that he was going faster than I was, and I didn't want the pressure of maintaining a higher speed, so I wouldn't end up slowing him down. Eventually, he moved off to the side of the trail, and I passed. When I stopped at the end of Loop C for a break, and before moving on to Loop D, he caught up with me and we started talking. He normally didn't ride, but was out there doing some physical training for his baseball team. Come to find out, while writing a trail feature, which you'll see later in this video, that has an egregious amount of warning signs posted, he used a bit too much front brake and went over the bars, sending his bike into a tree. It was okay, but his rear wheel wasn't rolling properly. It was actually stopping itself at one point in its rotation. I took a look at it, and his rear brake rotor was bent on one side, seizing the wheel when it went through the brake caliper. Since I had tools with me, I attempted to bend the rotor back with a crescent wrench, but to no avail. Ultimately, I was able to use a torque driver to adjust the brake pad far enough out that the rotor was no longer seizing the rear wheel. Unfortunately, that meant he had no rear brakes for the remainder of the ride. To make sure nothing happened, I followed him through Loop D until he came up on a spot where he could leave the trail and return to the parking lot. Had I not been there with my tools, he would have had to deal with the dragging rotor and walking the bike the rest of the way back. In hindsight, since he was okay, it would have made for a great highlight clip if I didn't pass him. Speaking of passing, when you're riding on a mountain bike trail and a faster rider comes up behind you, the appropriate action to take is to acknowledge the presence of the faster rider and pull off to the side of the trail as soon as safely possible to let the faster rider pass, as you see me do here and again in a few minutes. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that Blue Square rated trails could have climbing switchbacks, something that many content creators, myself included, were typically cut out for a highlight type video. Well, here's our first example of several on this trail. At this point on the trail, we're coming up on another climbing switchback, this time with a twist. If you look at the ground in front of my bike as I start the turn, there's some chain link fence somewhat buried in the dirt. This isn't trash or just randomly placed there. Many mountain bike trails have materials similar to this on some features to aid in traction. As a side note, I rode this trail the day before I recorded this and couldn't make it all the way up this feature. Faulkner Park's Loop C has a bit of a hidden feature. On the left of the screen, there will be a bunch of dirt and a small pond. On the rim of the pond is a pump track. One of the core mountain bike skills is pumping. What that is instead of pedaling to increase your speed while on certain trail features, particularly small mounds called rollers, you can essentially shift your weight vertically on the bike using your knees. Pump tracks are a great way to learn and improve this skill. Up ahead, there's a pretty tall mound of dirt covered in a rubber mat. When I first saw it the day before this footage was recorded, it spooked me. I had to stop, lay the bike down off the trail, and walk this feature. No idea what was on the other side of it, or if there was a way around it if I felt I couldn't do it. So I needed to check it out before I rode up to it. That's something that a rider needs to do every time that they come up to an unknown feature to ensure that they know what's coming, but to prevent a crash. Fortunately for me, once I walked this feature, I realized that all I needed to do was have a good bit of speed to get up it, and it was simple to clear.
Thank you.
All these signs make the upcoming feature seem like it's a black diamond or tougher feature. In reality, though, it's not all that bad. However, it is the feature that the guy just passed crashed on. When you're on a trail and come across someone who seems like they could use some help, ask them if they're okay. In a worst case, they could need medical assistance and don't have any means of contacting help. In a better scenario like this one, they have everything they need. This couple actually passed me while I was helping fix the other guy's bike and asked us if everything was okay. As a matter of fact, two other riders passed us and asked us if everything was okay as well.
No good?
Just like that, a random 2-foot long, 1-inch thick stick found its way up against my seat
Stick in my
post.
wheel.
Man, dodged a bullet on that one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to be notified when I upload a new video. Thanks for watching.